How to make, or how I made, this mixed medium chair. Let's get into it. I started by squaring the lumber with a jointer, planer, and table saw. Then ripped 2 by 2 inch pieces to start in on the leg frames. After somehow knocking the camera lens to manual focus instead of autofocus, I then took the 2 by 2s to the miter saw and cut some compound miters to account for the leg set angle and splay. I'll list the exact angles in the description below. Each leg set had 2 15 and 7/16 inch pieces at the longest diagonal to create the legs, and 2 5 and 7/16 inch pieces to create the arch that would connect the legs as well as the leg set to the rest of the chair. After completing the cuts, I used the domino jointer to connect one arch and one leg together. Then use some counter angle clamping to glue the 4 sets together. After that, I took 2 of the pairs and again used the domino jointer to join them together to create a pair of legs for the front and back of the chair. With those complete, I used a 45-degree chamfer bit to add a bevel to the outer edges of each set. Then it was time to clear some space for the steel plate that would anchor the metal bracketing to the legs. Happy with the fit, I turned to drilling the recesses for the lag screws. Then got to work cutting the steel tubing to form the metal framework. I'll again include the compound miters used to create these pieces in the description below. With the tubing cut, I prepped each piece by grinding bevels along the pieces I would butt weld together, and tidied up the plates as well. To make the rear bracketing, I tack welded the long uprights to the plate steel, as well as the smaller tubing pieces 2 inches above the plate along the long upright. Then ran my welds. And ground the beads flush. I worked through the same process for the shorter front bracketing system, finishing off the pieces with a second piece of plate steel on top to complete the connection points. With the bracket basics done, I used the plate steel as my guide to mark the pre-drilled recesses for the lag bolts. Then test fit the brackets. Happy with the mounting, I finished off the rear brackets by welding the final plates to the smaller bracket and top of the longer upright to connect the seat and back respectively. Then cracked on with the seat, first by squaring the lumber. Then laminating enough for roughly 18 by 16 inches. Once that cured, I cut the seat panel square. Then, with the table saw set to 50 degrees, I cut a bevel on both sides. Of course, I slightly miscalculated in order for the blade to remove the excess entirely, so I used the table saw and crosscut sled to remove the bevel and tidied up the seam with a hand plane. Then I mapped out and began hand carving a more comfortable seat. Pleased with the slope of the seat, I decided to create a more interesting shape by cutting down either side of the seat. With the seat roughed out, I got to work measuring, marking, and cutting away the recesses for the plate of the metal brackets that would anchor the back of the seat to the back leg set. Then test mounted it into place. I went about the same steps to place the front leg sets. Pleased with how that panned out, I knew I would need to add more rigidity towards the base of the legs, so I got to work on the metal bracket that would act as the chair's stretcher, giving the plate steel panels the same recess treatment. Before turning to welding the actual frame together. Then grinding away my sloppy welds. To finalize the stretcher system, I rounded over the ends of the plate steel to ensure the mounts would fit nicely on the beveled legs. Then got to work placing the recesses for the lag bolts. And of course, test fitting for success. The final piece of the puzzle was the back. Honestly, I went through a few ideas before landing on simply hand carving the curved back. I'm still not super stoked with the final option, but that's the beauty of chairs. They give you a great platform to mess around with design. They have to look good from so many angles. I learn so much every time I attempt to put to reality one I've designed a facet of in my head. If you couldn't tell already, the facet I was messing around with on this chair was obviously the legs and the bracketing system. I did cut a 10-degree bevel on the bottom so the chair back would sit at a slight angle for greater comfort to its occupant. Then got to work sanding all the wooden pieces down to finish level. Before spraying on some satin lacquer. The metal brackets got a similar cleanup treatment before I sprayed them with this gray stone color. I waffled between it and black. Let me know if I made the right choice. Then it was time to put all the puzzle pieces back together, so I could finally work on placing the seat back on its mount. I marked and cut the recesses before simply brushing on a few coats of lacquer for this final piece. Then mounted it into place. And that's a wrap. If you're a fan of projects like this, or the DIY shop upgrades it takes to knock out projects like this, join us over on Patreon. I post a lot of footage and pictures of what's going on in the shop, and patrons often get a sneak peek of upcoming projects. To all my current patrons, I cannot thank you enough for your support. Until next time, or on Patreon.